I want you to picture something for me. You're standing in a bank in a small city in the southern Philippines. Tile floors, loud air conditioning, a guard by the door holding a shotgun like it's a broom. The woman behind the glass turns her monitor so you can see it, the way people do when they don't want to say the words out loud. And what's on that screen is your entire life. 41 years of 40/40 alarms, steel-toed boots, a punch clock, your kid's picture taped inside a locker door, one house, one pension, one buyout check. 11,000 pesos, about $200. She asks if you want to make a withdrawal. You say no thank you, and you walk out into the heat, and you realize you don't have enough money to get on a plane home. Not that you have a home, you sold it. I'm Dale. I'm 66 years old, and in 7 months I went through $800,000. Nobody stole it out of my pocket. Nobody put a gun to my head. I handed it over. Every single dollar of it, I handed over with a smile on my face, because I thought I was building something. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. I worked at a stamping plant outside Toledo, Ohio for 31 years. And before that, I did 9 years in a tool and die shop that doesn't exist anymore. Tool and die is real work. You measure to the thousandth. You get it right, or the whole line stops, and 40 guys stand around looking at you. I was good at it. I was known for it. Guys would bring me apart and say, "Dale, what do you think?" And I'd look at it and tell them. And I was right most of the time. I mention that because I want you to understand something up front. I was not a stupid man. I want to say that clearly, once, and then I'm not going to say it again, because by the end of this you might disagree with me, and that's fair. My wife's name was Deborah. We were married 34 years. She had a stroke on a Sunday afternoon in March while she was putting away groceries. I was in the garage. I heard something and I thought she dropped a jar. She lived 11 more days in a hospital bed in Toledo, and then she didn't. We had 2 kids. My son Craig, who's a plumbing contractor in Sylvania, and who is exactly like me, which means we can go 4 months without a real conversation, and both think it's the other guy's fault. And my daughter Kelly, who lives in Charlotte with her husband and my 2 granddaughters, and who calls on Sundays. After Deborah, I did what men my age do. I kept the house too clean. I fixed things that weren't broken. I put a new belt on a mower I used maybe 6 times a year. I ate standing up at the counter because sitting down at that table alone was worse than not eating. There's a specific thing that happens, and nobody warns you about it. It isn't the crying. The crying is honestly the easy part. It's the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. 2 o'clock, nothing wrong, nobody sick, no bills due, and you're standing in the hallway of your own house, and you realize you have no reason to move in any direction. Not one. Nobody needs you to be anywhere. I did that for about a year and a half. Then in the spring, my sister Louise, who means well, put me on the internet. She said, "Dale, you're going to sit in that house until you die." She made me an account on a dating site for people over 50. I said no about 9 times, and then I said fine. She took a picture of me in my kitchen in a blue shirt. I looked like a hostage. I didn't get much on there. A couple of women my age from Michigan and Indiana, one nice one from Findlay, who I talked to for a month before she went back to her ex-husband. And then somewhere in there, I don't even remember how, I ended up in a Facebook group about retiring overseas. And then another one. And then I was watching videos at 11 at night about a place called Dumaguete. You've probably never heard of it. It's on an island called Negros, in the southern part of the Philippines. About 140,000 people. There's a university there, Silliman. Been around since 1901, so the whole town has students in it and everybody speaks English. There's a boulevard along the water where people walk in the evening. There's a market. There's a bakery that's been making the same cake since the 50s. I watched about 400 hours of that stuff. My rent-a-life. Guys in shorts on balconies telling me their electric bill. And in one of those groups, in the comments, a woman replied to something I posted. Her name was Ria. I'm going to tell you about her honestly, which is harder than it sounds, because there are two easy versions of this story, and both of them are lies. One version is that she was a monster who hunted me down. The other is that I was a fool who deserved everything he got. Neither one is true. And the truth in the middle is the part that might actually help somebody. Ria was 28. She had a 2-year diploma in hotel and restaurant management, and she was working the front desk at a small resort in Darwin, about half an hour south of town. Her English was better than mine. She was funny. Not fake funny, not flattering funny. She made fun of me. First week she told me my profile picture looked like a man reporting a crime. We talked for 6 months before I ever got on a plane. 6 months. Every day. Not sexy talk, and I want to be clear about that, because that's what everybody assumes. It was her telling me her boss was an idiot. It was me telling her about a dye that came in out of tolerance. It was her sending me a picture of rain on a tin roof at 5 in the morning because she knew I was awake. I was 65 years old, and somebody was texting me good morning. Understand what that does to a man who's been standing in a hallway at 2 in the afternoon. I told Kelly about her in August, over the phone, which was cowardly. There was a pause on the line, and Kelly said, "How old is she, Dad?" And I said, 28, and she said, "Okay," in a voice that was not okay at all. Craig was worse, because Craig didn't say anything. He just went quiet for about 3 weeks, and then he sent me one text that said, "You know what this is, right?" I got angry. That's the honest thing. I got angry because I already knew. Somewhere back in the shop floor part of my brain, the part that measures to the thousandth, a little voice said, "Check this." And I told that voice to shut up, and it did, because I wanted it to. That's the thing nobody tells you about getting taken. You're not tricked. You're not hypnotized. You're offered something, and you agree not to look at it too closely, and you make that agreement in about a second and a half, and then you spend the next year defending it. I flew out of Detroit in October. Detroit to Seoul, Seoul to Manila, Manila to Dumaguete, on a little plane that felt like a bus with wings. 29 hours door to door. I walked out of that airport into heat like a hand on your face, and she was standing behind the fence with her cousin, and she was jumping, actually jumping, up and down, waving with both arms like I was a soldier coming home. I'll be honest with you. If somebody had told me right then that it was going to cost me $800,000, I don't know for certain what I would have said. The first 3 weeks were the best 3 weeks I've had since the 80s. I stayed in a place on the boulevard for 1,800 pesos a night, about $30, with a balcony over the water. In the mornings, I'd walk down to a place near the market and eat puto maya, which is sticky rice with a little cup of thick hot chocolate and a fat yellow mango on the side, for about 80 pesos, $1.50. In the evenings, the whole town comes out on that boulevard. Families, students, old men playing chess, women selling balut off a bucket, kids running around like it's their living room. Nobody looked through me. That's what I keep coming back to. In Toledo, I had become furniture. Here I was Dale. The guard at the pharmacy learned my name in 4 days. 4 days. Ria's family had me over on the 5th day. Her mother, Feli, her grandmother, an uncle named Boyet, cousins, kids, dogs. I stopped counting at 22 people. Concrete house, tin roof, one long table made of 2 tables. They cooked lechon manok and kinilaw and a pot of tinolang isda. And they gave me the plastic chair with the arms on it, the good one, and Feli kept putting food on my plate every time it got below half. Boyet leaned over at some point and said, "Sir Dale, in the Philippines, when you marry one, you marry all." Everybody laughed. I laughed. I want you to remember that sentence, because it was the whole thing. He told me exactly what was going to happen, at the very beginning, out loud, in a friendly voice, and I heard it as a joke. I proposed in January, on the boulevard, in front of about 30 of her relatives who had all been told beforehand. There were flowers. There was a kid with a sign. Ria cried, and I don't think that part was fake. And I still don't. And honestly, that's the part I have the hardest time with. Now here's where I have to slow down and tell you about the money, because that's why you clicked on this. I had $806,000. Sale of the house, which was paid off, $290. The 401k, $410, which I took as a lump because I'm smart. A buyout from the plant, $61. Deborah's life insurance, $40. Plus Social Security, starting at $2,200 a month. Number 1. The land. Here's the fact that everything hangs on, and if you learn nothing else from me, learn this. A foreigner cannot own land in the Philippines. Not with a lawyer, not with a good heart, not if you love her very much. It's in their constitution. You can own a condo unit. You cannot own the ground. So the way it's done, the way everybody does it, is you buy the land in your Filipina partner's name. Everybody tells you this like it's a paperwork detail. It's not a paperwork detail. It means the land is hers. Fully, legally, forever, right now. We bought a lot up in Valencia, in the hills above town where it's cool at night. 480 square meters, 7.4 million pesos. Then we built 3 bedrooms, big kitchen, tile, a wall, a gate, a covered nipa hut out back. Another 9.2 million by the time it was finished. And it went over budget 3 separate times. And every time it did, Boye had a very reasonable explanation about the price of cement. That's 16.6 million pesos. About $295,000. Every peso of it in Ria's name. I signed the checks. My name is not on one document, not one. Number 2, the resort. Boyed had a corporation. He actually did. It was real. It had papers with a gold sticker. The idea was a small dive resort in Darwin, 8 rooms, because Darwin has world-class muck diving, and Europeans pay real money for it. He had a lot lined up. He had a partner who had a boat. He had a guy at the municipal office. A foreigner can own 40% of a Philippine corporation. 40. The other 60 has to be Filipino. So I put in $310,000 for a 40% share of a company controlled by my fiancé's uncle. Read that back to yourself slowly. Because when Boye said it to me across a table with a beer in his hand, with his nephew's kid asleep on my knee, it sounded like family. In a sentence on a page, it sounds like what it was. Number 3, everything else. A Fortuner, because we needed a real vehicle for the hills. 1.8 million. A pickup for the resort. A second-hand boat and 2 compressors. A tricycle for the cousin so he could work, which was 38,000. And honestly, that one I don't regret. Then the support. And this is the one that ate me alive, because it was never one big number. It was always small. Faylee's blood pressure medicine. The grandmother's cataract, which was real, and which I would pay for again today. A cousin's tuition at Foundation University. A brother-in-law's motorcycle accident. 4 days at Silliman Medical. And in the Philippines you settle the bill before they discharge. So there's a moment where you're standing at a window with a family looking at you. Then, a fiesta. Then, a debt to a lending shark that had to be cleared before it got ugly. Then, a sari-sari store for the sister. Then, a second sari-sari store for the other sister, because you can't do it for one and not the other. Somewhere in month 4, I stopped doing math. That is the exact moment I lost. Not the day the money ran out, the day I stopped counting. And I want to say something here that's important to me. Not one of those people was a criminal. I think about them now, and I don't think Faylee ever ran a scam in her life. In that culture, there is a thing they call utang na loob. a debt of the inside, and it runs both directions. You take care of people and people take care of you, and the family is one wallet, and everybody moves toward whoever has resources the way water finds the low ground. It's not malice, it's gravity. But gravity will still kill you if you step off a roof. I got warnings. That's the part that's hardest to admit. There was a lawyer in town, a woman named Atty. Consuelo, 60-something, spoke like a judge. Ria's family recommended her, which should have told me something, but I went to her alone one afternoon in February to ask about the land title. She looked at the papers for a long time. Then she took her glasses off and said, "Sir, do you understand that you have no interest in this property?" I said I understood, but that we were getting married. She put her glasses back on, and she said, "Then I hope you are married a long time." There was a guy named Nolan, an Australian, 68, been in Dumaguete 19 years. Sat at the same table every afternoon, at a place off the boulevard. He said one thing to me, once, and never brought it up again, which is the mark of a decent man. He said, "Mate, spend the interest, never the principal. The day you touch the principal, you're a tourist with an expiry date." And then there was Craig, my son, who sent me a link in March about the land ownership law with no message attached, and I replied with a thumbs up, and then I didn't speak to him for 5 months. Everybody told me. My kid told me. A lawyer told me. A stranger in a bar told me. And Boyer himself told me at that first dinner with a plate of lechon in front of him. You cannot say you weren't warned. Nobody can. That's not how this works. You get warned. You just decide the warning is about somebody else. It came apart in June, and it came apart fast, and it did not come apart the way you're expecting. There was no dramatic reveal. There was no other man, as far as I know to this day. Nobody laughed at me. What happened was much more ordinary than that. The resort stopped being discussed. That's how it started. Just, nobody brought it up anymore. When I asked, there was a permit problem, and then a different permit problem, and then a dispute with the lot owner. Boyer stopped picking up on the first call, then the second. I went to the municipal office in Darwin myself in the last week of June with a folder under my arm. And the woman there was very kind, and she looked it up, and there was no application. Not delayed, not pending, never filed. The corporation existed. The money had gone into the corporation, and then it had gone out of the corporation, over about 5 months, in a lot of small legitimate-looking pieces, and I owned 40% of an empty box with a gold sticker on it. I drove back to Valencia, and I sat in the truck in front of a house I paid for and did not own, and I opened my banking app on my phone. 11,000 pesos in the local account. $1,400 left in the account back home. That's it. That's all of it. I didn't yell at Ria. I've thought about why. I think it's because I already knew what she'd say and I was right. She cried. She was, I believe, genuinely horrified. At her uncle, at the situation, at me for being upset with her. She said she didn't know. She said the house is our house. She said her family would never do that. And here's the thing that took me a year to be able to say out loud. I think she was mostly telling the truth. I don't think Ria sat down at 22 and drew up a plan to take an old man's retirement. I think she liked me. I think she liked being the one who could fix her family's whole life. I think when the money was moving, she was in love. And I think when the money stopped moving, whatever she was in was over. And she could not tell the difference between those two things, and never will be able to. That's not a monster. That's worse, in a way. A monster you can be angry at. I moved out in July. She kept the house, because it was hers. Because that is the law, and I want to be very clear that she did not steal it. I bought it and gave it to her. That's what the paperwork says, and the paperwork is correct. I got a room above a bakery near the market for 4,500 pesos a month, $80. Fan, no aircon, shared bathroom down the hall. There was a rooster somewhere that started at 3:40 in the morning, and I knew it was 3:40 because I was awake for it every single day. I lost 19 pounds in about 2 months, and not the good way. I want to tell you about the worst night, because if I skip it, this is just a story about money, and it isn't. It was a Sunday in August. Rain like you can't imagine, the kind where it's just noise. I was lying on a foam mattress on the floor listening to it, and I did the math I'd been avoiding, which was, I am 66 years old. I have $2,200 a month coming in. I have no house, no savings, no assets, no wife, and my children were right about all of it. And then I thought about my son standing in a driveway in Sylvania, telling people his dad lost everything to a girl in the Philippines. I'm going to say this next part carefully, because I know some of you are in a bad spot right now, and I'm not going to be dramatic about it. I sat on that floor for a long time, thinking about ways out of it that a man shouldn't be thinking about. What stopped me was very small. It was the woman downstairs, Nanita, who ran the bakery, banging on the ceiling with a broom handle at about 6 in the morning, which was how she told me that pandesal was out of the oven. She'd been doing it for a few weeks. I'd never asked her to. I went down. She put 4 rolls in a paper bag and a cup of coffee on the counter, and she looked at my face for about 2 seconds, and she said, "Sir, you eat first, then think." Then she went back to work. She didn't ask me a single question. I paid her 20 pesos. I've had a lot of people say a lot of things to me in 66 years. That's the best advice I ever got. I called Kelly that week. It was the first honest conversation I'd had with anybody in over a year. I told her the number, the whole number, 806, and where every piece of it went. And I made myself say all of it, without any explanations attached, which took about 20 minutes. When I finished, she was quiet, and then she said, "Dad, are you eating?" "Not." "I told you so." "Not." "How could you?" "Are you eating?" And then she said the thing that broke me open. She said, "I'm not mad about the money. I'm mad that you were that lonely, and none of us noticed." Craig took longer. Craig took until November. He called me at some ridiculous hour his time, and we talked about a water heater for 9 minutes. And then he said, "You still over there?" And I said yes. And he said, "Okay." And that was the whole reconciliation. That's how it works with men like us. That okay was worth more than an apology. He asked me later why I didn't come home. And the truth is, I couldn't afford to. But there's a second truth underneath it, which is that I didn't want to go back to Ohio to be the guy it happened to. So here's my life now, 2.5 years later. And I want to give you real numbers, because real numbers are the only thing I've got left to give anybody. $2,200 a month from Social Security. My room is now a small place in Daro, 6,000 pesos, about $105, with a real bathroom and a window that catches the wind. Electricity runs me about 2,000 pesos because I only run the fan. I eat at the carinderias. You point at what's in the pans, they load a plate, 40 to 70 pesos. I buy fish at the market on Purdices Street, and I've learned to cook paksiw badly. I walk everywhere. A tricycle across town is 15 pesos. I live on about $900 a month, and I put the rest away. And yes, at 66, I am rebuilding a savings account from zero. There's about $11,000 in it. It took 2.5 years. I know exactly where every dollar of it is, and I check it, and I write it in a notebook by hand on the first of the month, like a man doing penance, which is more or less what it is. I do accounting for 2 small businesses in town. Not real accounting. I'm not licensed. I just keep their books straight, because it turns out that a man who spent 41 years measuring to the thousandth is very good at noticing when a number is wrong. It pays about 8,000 pesos a month, which is $140, which matters more than you'd think. And on Saturdays, I teach a class in a room at a community center for foreigners who just arrived. Free. I put a chair by the door and I sit in it, and I tell them exactly what I've told you, with the number on a whiteboard, 806,000. So it's the first thing they see. Some of them get up and leave. I understand it. Nobody wants to look at the ghost of Christmas future. But a few weeks ago, a guy came, 62, Wisconsin, 2 months in country, engaged, and he had a folder with him. Land purchase. Her name on it. Family business proposal in the back. He said, "But my situation is different." And I said, "Say more about that." And he talked for about 4 minutes, and then he stopped talking on his own, right in the middle of a sentence, because he heard himself. He hasn't bought the land. That's one. One is not nothing. Let me be very clear about a few things before I finish, because I've been at this long enough to know how this gets twisted in the comments. The Philippines did not do this to me. This country has been better to me broke than my own country was to me with $800,000 in the bank. Nanita banged on my ceiling with a broom. Attorney Consuelo told me the truth for free, and I ignored her. Nolan told me the truth over a beer, and I ignored him. There's a family on my street that has invited me to Noche Buena 2 years running, and they don't want a thing from me and never have. And Filipina women did not do this to me either, and if that's what you came here for, you can go find it somewhere else. I know 4 foreign men in this town in good marriages with Filipina wives, one of them 25 years in, and every one of those men kept his own money in his own name, and never once made his wife's family dependent on his checkbook. That's not a coincidence. That's the whole lesson. What did it was me. 65 years old, standing in a hallway at 2 in the afternoon, with nobody needing me to be anywhere, and then somebody needed me. And I paid for that feeling, like a man drinking, and I kept paying, because the day I stopped paying was the day I'd have to find out what it was really worth. Loneliness is the most expensive thing a man can own. I paid $806,000 for 11 months of not being alone. And if I'm honest with you, at 3 in the morning sometimes, I'm still not entirely sure I overpaid. That's the part I'd fix if I could, not the money. The math I was doing in my heart. So if you're where I was, house too quiet, kids busy, phone not ringing, and there's somebody nice on a screen in a warm country who sends you good morning, I'm not going to tell you not to go. I went, and I'm still here, and there are mornings on that boulevard with the sun coming up over Cebu across the water when I wouldn't trade this for anything. I'm going to tell you 3 things instead, and then I'll let you go. Never spend the principal. Never put your name on nothing and your money on everything. And whatever you do, do it slowly, because a good thing will still be there in a year, and the other kind won't wait, and that impatience is the only tell you'll ever get. Before I go, one last thing. There's a guide I came across after all this, called Paper and Promises. Written by a retired attorney who spent a long time cleaning up messes like mine out here. It goes through the land ownership law, the corporation structure, the visa options, prenuptial agreements under Philippine family law, and the specific ways this goes wrong. I didn't write it. I don't get anything from it. I just wish somebody had put it in my hands in October of that year, instead of me finding it in a room above a bakery 2 years too late. There's a link down in the description if you want it. No pressure either way. And if this was worth your time, hit like and subscribe if you want to hear more of these. There are other people out here with stories like mine, and some of them are harder than mine, and I think you ought to hear them before you need them. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves.